The pattern nobody else could see. The most difficult problem in the galaxy. The conference room on Station Unity fell silent as Ambassador Thelkon displayed the message on the holographic screen. 23 species had sent their best minds to this emergency meeting. Everyone stared at the symbols floating in the air, symbols that had appeared on every major communication network exactly 7 days ago. The message came from somewhere beyond known space. It repeated every 6 hours. It used no language anyone recognized. Every mathematical system, every linguistic pattern, every code-breaking algorithm in the galaxy had failed to translate it. This is the 14th day since the signal began, Thelkon said, his blue crystalline body reflecting the light nervously. Our experts estimate we have 3 more days before something happens. Something bad. Why it mattered. Dr. Saren, a brilliant Quilix scientist with 4 arms and a mind like a supercomputer, spoke next. We know the message is a warning. The signal contains a countdown sequence we finally identified yesterday. When it reaches 0, we believe a weapon will activate. A weapon powerful enough to destroy multiple star systems. The room erupted in worried voices. Representatives from different species talked over each other in dozens of languages. Fear filled the air like electricity before a storm. How do you know it's a weapon? Asked General Vorix, a massive Krell warrior covered in armored scales. Because 3 days ago, a small probe appeared near the outer rim, Dr. Saren explained. It matched the energy signature of the signal. When our ships approached, it released a pulse that destroyed everything within 1,000 kilometers. Then it disappeared. The message that followed showed a number. We believe it indicated how many probes exist. The number was 3,000. 3,000 probes. Each one capable of massive destruction. The math was simple and terrifying. If all of them activated, billions would die. The impossible task. We've tried everything, said Lord Kavesh, the spider-like arachneer who led the Council's science division. We've used quantum computers. We've consulted with the oldest species in the known galaxy. We've even tried random guessing with probability matrices. Nothing works. Kavesh's 8 eyes blinked sadly. The problem is that this code doesn't follow any pattern we understand. It's not mathematical. It's not linguistic. It's not based on physics or chemistry or any universal constant we know. It's something else entirely. Perhaps it cannot be solved, suggested Elder Mothare, the wise leader of the Zenthari people. Perhaps whoever sent this message does not want us to understand. Perhaps destruction is inevitable. No. The single word came from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look. The human who nobody expected. James Park sat in the last row, wearing a simple gray jacket. He was young for a human, maybe 30 years old. His black hair was messy, and he wore glasses even though humans had laser surgery to fix vision problems centuries ago. He looked completely ordinary. Excuse me? Ambassador Thelkon said. Who are you? James Park. I'm a linguist from Earth. I study dead languages. He stood up, looking nervous but determined. I've been studying your message for 3 days. I think I can solve it. The room filled with laughter. Not mean laughter, but the kind that comes from stress and disbelief. Here was a human, from a species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, claiming he could solve what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not. Young human, Dr. Saren said kindly, we appreciate your enthusiasm. But this is beyond linguistics. We've had experts from 200 worlds examine this code. I know, James said. I read all their reports. That's how I know they're looking at it wrong. The laughter stopped. Ambassador Thelkon studied the human carefully. Explain. The pattern hidden in plain sight. James walked to the front of the room, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the holographic display showing the alien symbols. Everyone has been treating this like a puzzle to solve. But what if it's not a puzzle? What if it's a story? A story? General Vorix growled. We're talking about a weapon, not bedtime tales for children. Stories are humanity's oldest technology, James said quietly. Before we had writing, we had stories. Before we had mathematics, we had stories. We used them to remember important information, to pass knowledge across generations, to explain complex ideas in ways everyone could understand. He pointed at the symbols. This message repeats every 6 hours, right? But it's not exactly the same each time. It changes slightly. Everyone thought those changes were random noise. But what if they're not? What if each repetition is adding to a story? Dr. Saren's forearms moved excitedly. We noticed the variations, but we couldn't find a pattern. That's because you were looking for mathematical patterns, James said. But stories don't follow math. They follow emotional logic. They have rhythm and flow. They have beginnings, middles, and ends. The human method. James pulled out his personal tablet and displayed his work. For 3 days, I've been reading this message not as code, but as narrative. I looked at which symbols appear together most often. I looked at how the rhythm changes. I looked at repetition patterns that match storytelling structures from Earth's ancient cultures. He showed them a chart. See here? This symbol appears at the start of each major section, like a chapter heading. This one appears at the end, like a conclusion. These clusters in the middle follow a pattern that matches what we call the hero's journey, a story structure that appears in human cultures all across Earth, even ones that never met each other. Lord Kavesh leaned forward, his 8 eyes focusing intently. You're suggesting this message uses universal storytelling patterns? Not universal, James corrected. Human. But here's the thing about humans. We're relatively new to the galaxy, right? We haven't evolved as long as most of you. We don't have natural telepathy or quantum brains or crystalline memory structures. What we have is pattern recognition that evolved for survival. We got really good at finding patterns in chaos because the humans who couldn't died out. He took a breath. We see faces in clouds. We hear music in random sounds. We find meaning in everything, even when there isn't any. It's a bug in our programming, but sometimes bugs become features. The translation begins. Elder Mothare spoke softly. Show us what you have found. James nodded and began manipulating the holographic display. If I'm right about the structure, then this message is telling us who sent the probes and why. Let me show you. He rearranged the symbols according to his theory. Suddenly, patterns emerged. The seemingly random symbols began forming groups that looked almost like sentences. This first section, James said, pointing, talks about a species called the Builders. They existed millions of years ago. They created the probes as a test. A test? General Vorik snarled. A test that kills billions? Not exactly, James continued, his confidence growing as his translation proved consistent. The Builders wanted to know if future intelligent species could work together. The probes activate if the species receiving the message fail to understand it. But here's the key, the message isn't really coded. It's just written in a way that requires cooperation to understand. He pulled up another section. See these symbols? They represent different types of thinking. This one is logical analysis. This one is intuitive creativity. This one is collaborative problem solving. The Builders designed the message so that no single approach could solve it. You need multiple perspectives working together. Dr. Saren's eyes widened. That's why our experts failed. Each species sent their best individual minds, but everyone worked separately. The Quilix used pure logic. The Zenthari used philosophical reasoning. The Krell used tactical analysis. But nobody combined approaches. Exactly, James said. The message is designed to be solved by many minds working as one. The Builders wanted to see if different species could truly cooperate, or if they would fragment and fail when facing a challenge. The key to everything. So how do we stop the probes? Ambassador Thelkon asked urgently. James displayed the final section of symbols. This part here is the deactivation code. But it's not just a sequence we input somewhere. It's a test we have to pass. According to my translation, representatives from at least 10 different species must speak the code together, in perfect synchronization, broadcasting from this station. Speak it? Lord Kavesh asked. How do we pronounce alien symbols? That's where human pattern recognition comes in again, James said with a slight smile. These symbols aren't just visual. They have phonetic properties embedded in their structure. The curves suggest vowel sounds. The sharp angles suggest consonants. The size variations suggest rhythm and emphasis. He demonstrated, speaking a series of sounds that seemed to flow from the symbols naturally. They were strange sounds, neither human nor alien, but somehow universal. Musical and mathematical at the same time. It will take me another day to create a full pronunciation guide, James said. But I'm confident this is correct. The builders wanted to see if different species could literally speak with one voice. That's the test. That's always been the test. The beginning of understanding. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Elder Mothare began to laugh. It was a sound like wind chimes, beautiful and unexpected. A human saw what we could not. How fitting. How wonderfully fitting. Ambassador Thelkon stepped forward and placed a hand on James's shoulder. You may have saved the galaxy, young human. We will need your help to teach us this pronunciation. We will need representatives from many species to speak the code together. I'll help however I can, James said. But I need to say something important. I didn't solve this alone. I used research from Quilix mathematicians to understand the symbol structure. I used Zenthari philosophy to grasp the underlying meaning. I used Krell tactical analysis to identify the countdown sequence. Every species here contributed to the solution. I just saw how to put it all together. Dr. Saren approached with all four hands extended in the Quilix gesture of respect. You have taught us something valuable today. Not just about this message, but about the nature of intelligence itself. Perhaps the builder's test was as much about humility as cooperation. The work begins. For the next 24 hours, James worked without sleep. He created detailed guides for pronouncing each symbol. He worked with linguists from a dozen species, adapting the sounds for different vocal structures. Some species could produce sounds humans couldn't. Some species communicated through light or vibration. James found ways to include everyone. General Vorix, initially skeptical, became one of his strongest supporters. The massive Krell warrior helped organize the representatives who would speak the code. I was wrong about you, human, Vorix admitted. I thought your species was too young, too inexperienced. But perhaps fresh eyes see clearest. Lord Kavesh provided his species advanced audio technology to help synchronize the different voices. The Arachnier have studied harmony for thousands of years, he said. We will make sure every voice blends perfectly. By the end of the day, representatives from 15 different species had gathered in the main communication center. They had all learned their parts. They had practiced together until their voices merged into something greater than the sum of its parts. James stood at the center, conducting like a musical director. The countdown showed 3 hours remaining. They had one chance to get this right. Remember, James said to the assembled representatives, this isn't about perfection. It's about unity. The builders want to hear different voices becoming one voice. Don't try to sound exactly alike. Let your differences harmonize. Ambassador Thelkon raised his hand. It is time. Let us show the builders that this galaxy has learned to work together. Let us speak with one voice. James gave the signal. 15 different species began to speak the ancient code in perfect synchronization. The sounds filled the station, traveling across space at the speed of light, reaching toward the probes that threatened billions of lives. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient machines listened to hear if this young galaxy had finally learned the most important lesson of all, the voice that united the stars. The moment of truth. The voices filled every corner of Station Unity. 15 species speaking as one, each bringing their own unique sound to create something impossible and beautiful. The Quilix voices provided mathematical precision. The Zenthuri added philosophical depth. The Krell brought powerful resonance. And at the center, James Park conducted them all, his human hands moving in patterns that somehow made sense to everyone. The sound was like nothing anyone had ever heard. It wasn't music, exactly. It wasn't speech, exactly. It was something in between, something that touched both the logical mind and the emotional heart. Dr. Sarin monitored the broadcast equipment with all 4 arms working simultaneously. The signal is reaching the probe locations, she reported. Energy signatures are changing. Something is happening. The response from the dark. Across the galaxy, 3,000 probes received the message. For 14 days, they had waited in the void, counting down to destruction. Now they heard what they had been programmed to listen for, the sound of unity, the voice of cooperation, the proof that this young galaxy had learned to work together. One by one, the probes began to change. Their weapon systems powered down. Their countdown sequences stopped. And then, incredibly, they began to transform. On the holographic displays at Station Unity, everyone watched in amazement. The probes were opening like flowers, revealing technology inside that glowed with soft light. What's happening? General Vorix demanded. Are they still dangerous? James studied the symbols that appeared on the screen, new symbols that flowed from the transforming probes. His eyes widened. They're not weapons anymore. They never were, not really. They're gifts. The builder's true purpose. The new message was clearer than the first. Now that the test was passed, the builders wanted to explain everything. James translated quickly, his voice filled with wonder. The builders created these probes millions of years ago, before they left this galaxy. They were an ancient species that had learned the hard way that technology without unity leads to destruction. They destroyed themselves in wars because they never learned to cooperate. He continued reading. Before they disappeared, they wanted to leave something behind. They created these probes as a final gift, but only for species that proved they could work together. The test had to be difficult. The stakes had to be real. Because easy cooperation means nothing. True unity only shows itself when the cost of failure is high. Elder Mothare spoke softly. They wanted to make sure we were ready before giving us their knowledge. Exactly, James confirmed. The probes contained technology the builders spent millions of years developing. Faster than light travel that's safe and efficient. Medical treatments that work across different biologies. Agricultural systems that can feed entire planets. Energy generation that's clean and limitless. Everything they learned, everything they created, is stored in these probes. The gift that changed everything. Dr. Sarin was checking the data streaming from the nearest probe. This is incredible. The medical database alone contains cures for diseases we thought were impossible to treat. The engineering specifications show propulsion systems that would let us cross the galaxy in months instead of years. Lord Kavesh examined the agricultural data with his 8 eyes moving rapidly. The farming techniques here could end hunger on every world in the galaxy. This is beyond anything we imagined. But there's a condition, James said, still reading the builder's message. The technology only works when different species cooperate to use it. The faster-than-light drives require components that 3 different species must build together. The medical treatments need knowledge from multiple biological systems. The agricultural methods work best when adapted by minds with different perspectives. Ambassador Thelkon understood immediately. The builders made sure we can't just take the technology and go back to working separately. We have to continue cooperating if we want to benefit from their gifts. It's genius, James said with admiration. They didn't just give us technology. They gave us a reason to stay united. They created a system where cooperation isn't just morally right, it's practically necessary. The human paradox. General Vorix approached James with something like respect in his eyes. You solved the puzzle that stumped the galaxy's greatest minds. Yet you are human, from a young species with no special abilities. How? James thought about the question carefully. I think that's exactly why I could solve it. See, humans have a strange relationship with patterns. We're really good at finding them, but we're also really good at questioning them. He gestured at the assembled representatives. Every species here is smarter than humans in specific ways. The Quilix can calculate faster. The Zenthari can think more philosophically. The Krell can plan tactically better. But humans have something different. We have the ability to see connections that don't obviously exist. Dr. Saren tilted her head curiously. Can you explain that? The story of human nature. On Earth, James began, humans evolved as hunters and gatherers. We weren't the strongest animals. We weren't the fastest. We didn't have claws or fangs or armor. What we had was the ability to see patterns and tell stories. He walked to the window overlooking space. We looked at stars and saw animals, heroes, gods. We looked at weather patterns and created myths to explain them. We looked at human behavior and created stories to teach lessons. Everything became a narrative in our minds. This made us excellent at survival, he continued. We could predict where animals would be by reading tracks. We could anticipate danger by noticing small details. We could cooperate in large groups by sharing stories that created common purpose. Elder Mothare nodded slowly. So when you looked at the Builder's message, you saw a story where others saw only code. Exactly. And here's the important part, I'm not special among humans. Any human linguist with the right background could have done this. Pattern recognition and storytelling are just what our species does naturally. The lesson about diversity. Lord Kavesh spoke thoughtfully. This teaches us something important about diversity. For years, some species have argued that we should standardize, that everyone should think the same way for efficiency. But this proves that different ways of thinking are valuable. More than valuable, James said. They're necessary. The builders knew this. That's why they designed a test that required multiple perspectives. No single type of intelligence, no matter how advanced, could solve it alone. Ambassador Thelkon addressed the assembled representatives. We have learned something today that goes beyond technology. We have learned that our differences are our strength. The human James Park couldn't have solved this without building on work from every species here. And we couldn't have solved it without the unique human ability to see stories and data. The new era begins. Over the following weeks, teams from different species began working with the Builder technology. The results exceeded everyone's hopes. A joint team of Quilix engineers and Krell metallurgists created the first prototype of the new faster-than-light engine. A combined group of Zenthari philosophers and human doctors developed medical treatments that worked across species boundaries. Arachnier farmers and Techron ecologists revolutionized food production. James found himself in high demand. Everyone wanted the human who had saved the galaxy. Governments offered him positions. Universities offered professorships. Corporations offered wealth beyond imagination. He turned them all down. I'm just a linguist, he told Ambassador Thelkon when they met privately. I did what I'm good at. But there's more work to do. The Builder's message wasn't just about this one crisis. It was about changing how we think about cooperation. What will you do? Thelkon asked. I want to create an institute, James said. A place where different species can learn to work together, not just on big problems, but on small ones. A place that teaches people to value different perspectives. A place that shows diversity isn't just politically correct, it's scientifically necessary. Thelkon's crystalline body glowed with approval. The Council will fund this institute. We will call it the Builders Academy, in honor of those who taught us this lesson. The human who changed the galaxy. 5 years later, the Builders Academy had campuses on 50 worlds. Students from every known species came to learn not just technology, but how to work across cultural and biological boundaries. The curriculum included everything from alien linguistics to practical cooperation exercises. James taught a course called Finding Patterns Across Cultures. His students loved him not because he was the human who saved the galaxy, but because he showed them how to see the universe through different eyes. On the anniversary of solving the Builder's Code, James gave a speech to the entire student body. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, including all 15 species that had spoken the code together. 5 years ago, I did something that seemed impossible, James began. But I want you to understand something important. I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. Every breakthrough came from combining different perspectives, different abilities, different ways of thinking. He looked out at the diverse crowd. The builders left us a test, and we passed. But passing once isn't enough. Every day brings new challenges that require cooperation. Every problem worth solving needs multiple perspectives. Humans have a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The builders understood this. They knew that lasting success requires unity, not uniformity. Different voices singing together, not the same voice repeated. The legacy of unity. Dr. Sarin, now the Academy's science director, presented the latest results from builder technology research. We've made progress that would have taken centuries without cooperation, she announced. The new medical centers have saved millions of lives. The agricultural systems have ended hunger on 12 worlds. The propulsion systems have opened previously unreachable regions of space. General Vorix, who had become an unexpected advocate for interspecies cooperation, spoke about military applications. The defense networks we've built use Krell tactical planning, Quilix computational speed, and human strategic creativity. They're more effective than anything we could have built separately, and ironically, they've made actual fighting almost unnecessary. When everyone cooperates, there's less to fight about. Lord Kavesh discussed economic changes. The builder technology has created abundance we never imagined possible. But more importantly, it's created economic systems where cooperation is more profitable than competition. Everyone benefits when we work together. The future was always about working together. As the ceremony ended, James stood alone on a balcony overlooking the Academy grounds. Students from dozens of species walked together, talking, laughing, learning from each other. This was what the builders had wanted to see. This was the future they had hoped for. Elder Mothari joined him, her ancient presence comforting. You seem thoughtful, young human. I was just thinking about the builders, James said. They destroyed themselves because they couldn't cooperate. They left us these gifts hoping we would do better. I hope we don't let them down. We won't, Mothare said with certainty. Because you taught us something the builders learned too late. That diversity isn't a problem to solve, it's a resource to use. That different perspectives aren't obstacles to overcome, they're tools for building something greater. James smiled. I didn't teach that. I just reminded everyone of what they already knew. Perhaps, Mothare said. But sometimes the most important wisdom is simply helping others see what was always there. The message that never ends. That night, James returned to his small apartment on the Academy campus. He pulled out his old tablet, the one he had used to first decode the builder message. He still had his original notes, his attempts at translation, his breakthrough moment when he realized the code was a story. He opened a new document and began to write. Not a translation this time, but a record. A story about what had happened, written so that future generations would understand. He wrote about fear and hope. He wrote about cooperation and diversity. He wrote about how a young human linguist had looked at impossible symbols and seen a story that saved the galaxy. But mostly, he wrote about what came after. About how passing one test led to bigger challenges. About how the real work wasn't solving the code, but building a society that valued what the code had taught. He wrote late into the night, knowing this story would be added to archives across the galaxy. Knowing that someday, perhaps millions of years from now, Another species might find it and learn the lesson the builders had learned too late. That the greatest strength of any civilization isn't its technology or its weapons or its knowledge. It's the ability of different voices to speak as one. It's the willingness of different minds to work together. It's the understanding that diversity isn't just acceptable, it's essential. The builders had learned this lesson through destruction. Humanity and its allies had learned it through cooperation. And that made all the difference. James finished writing as dawn broke over the academy. He saved the document with a simple title, "The Pattern Nobody Else Could See." Then he went to prepare for another day of teaching, another day of helping different species understand each other, another day of proving that the galaxy's greatest resource wasn't ancient technology. It was each other.